concerned of the law changed not only by executive orders and some of the court cases, but also what Congress has done. It is established and understood and part of our culture and our law today that accepts the notion that our president can use the military to arrest American citizens. Arrest American citizens, that would be one thing bad enough using the military, but it is understood now by those in charge that they can be held in secret without an attorney. Indefinitely. That is not what America's all about. I'll tell you, it just is, and that has to be challenged. I think a little bit back about Texas history. You know, Mexico got their independence in 1821 from Spain. They wrote a pretty darn good constitution in 1824. And by 1832, there was some disruption in Texas, mainly near where I live, in a little town called Velasco. And there was a battle in Velasco. Guess what they were fighting over? The Mexican military arrested 17 Texans, including William Travis, in a little town called Anahuac in Galveston Bay. And they were furious, mainly because the military arrested them and they were denied a civil trial. And they were going to be hauled off to Veracruz to be prosecuted. And that was the first fight, really, of the War for Independence. So that was the issue that motivated our founders, the British. The soldiers came in, invaded their houses, and marched in and made arrests. So it's military control over civilians that prompted our revolutions, the Texas Revolution, and it's been legalized in this country. And I would say it's time to remove that and live up to the rule of law, the Fifth Amendment, the rule of law, and the due process. It has been stated by some of the legal advisors to our current president that he has the authority not only to retain individual Americans that he suspects might be bad people, but he also claims that he has the right that if you've had a trial as an American citizen and you were found to be innocent, that they can still hold you in secret prison. People will say, yeah, but how many times does that happen? It only needs to be on the books and happen once or twice, and that's way too much. On a routine basis, our president has meetings with his legal advisors because they go over a kill list. Who's going to get killed without due process of law? It reminds me of what Roosevelt did. Roosevelt, I bet you could guess, was probably not my favorite president. But Roosevelt, of course, stole the gold from the American people, closed, you know, and then when he stole the gold at $20 an ounce, what he did then was they were fixing the price of gold up so that they could inflate. So on a daily basis, Roosevelt, with some of his economic advisors, would sit around a table and decide what the price of gold would be. And but today, I thought that was pretty bad, but today, literally, they sit around and they pick a hit list. Some are American citizens that are on this hit list, but people all around the world. Oh, but they're bad guys. They're terrorists. They want to kill us. They want to do these things. And they say, well, and we can do it in a sterile way. All we have to do is have a drone. Shoot them. Nobody's in danger. But guess what? Using drones to drop bombs and innocent people getting killed, no due process of law, guess what? It makes a lot of enemies for us. I think it's a foolish foreign policy. We have drifted a long way from the idea of due process of law. They've made fun of this process. The administration, when they have been quizzed on this, well, what about the Fifth Amendment? Aren't we supposed to have due process of law? And they said, well, we give them due process of law. But we fulfill the obligation to have due process of law because 2 or 3 individuals in the White House sit around and they decide whether he's a really bad guy or not. The one thing to try to remember, whether it's here in this country or any place in the world, when you say, that guy is a bad guy, and we need to take care of him, he's still a suspect. He's still a suspect. He's not a terrorist, he's a suspect. So all around the world, we're deciding just willy-nilly who the terrorists are and who the suspects are. And I'll tell you what, it's going to give us more trouble than good. And that's where we are today. So this is the reason that we don't have to think that these ideas are coming from the far left. These ideas are traditional, they're conservative, they're constitutional, and they've been Republican in the past. I would like to say it's time for us to revitalize these ideas of the due process of law and never go to war without a declaration of war and win the war. To accept and sit back and let our government go to war without a declaration. And you know, this administration, they're really quite bold. I guess you've noticed that. But they come and they testify, and when they're challenged, they say, well, don't you think you should have a declaration? No, we don't need that. Don't you think you should ask Congress? No, we don't need that. We'll get our marching orders, we'll get our declaration, we'll get our authority from the United Nations and from NATO. They claim that is where the authority comes from. But I'll tell you what, we would fight a lot less wars, we'd be a lot more peace, we'd be a lot richer, and I do not believe we would be in any greater danger if we just followed the law. 4 years ago, when the economic crisis hit, it sent a lot of signals. As I said, you know, it's the announcement that there will be the elimination of the Keynesian economic theories, and something will have to replace it. It could be totalitarianism, it could be free markets. I'm betting on the free markets and more freedoms because I hear good messages around the country. I've really talked to hundreds of thousands of young people in the last couple of years, most of them probably on campuses. Believe me, they are concerned, they're worried, they want their freedom, they don't want debt, they want jobs, and they do not believe that the government can be delivered to them on a platter. They believe it can be found in the cause of liberty and not in the cause of expanding the role of big government. C.S. Lewis, many years ago, gave some advice about we as people, and he talked about a good egg can't remain a good egg forever. A good egg either has to hatch or it will rot. And I was thinking of an analogy, you know, maybe we could make the analogy to what the founders did. They gave us a good egg. I think they gave us a constitutional republic. They gave it this egg, and it has not really hatched. The ideas of liberty were well studied. The founders understood it so clearly and built on it, and because they were well informed, biblically as well as philosophically, they were able to write a wonderful document. And they warned us, if we don't remain as free and moral people, the document won't mean anything. So I'm afraid that we're allowing much to be rotted away. If you look at the last 100 years, we have given up so much of our liberties, and we have become so dependent because we became so rich. Because a free society creates great wealth, and that makes people soft on the issue of protecting how you produce wealth. So we were just able to redistribute wealth, reward the lobbyists, reward the politicians, and everybody seemed to think just shifting wealth around, everything was okay, except now, today everybody knows there's no wealth there. It's only made up of debt. So I think the whole system has rotted away, and I would like to see this egg hatch. One thing the founders warned us against was pure democracy. They said pure democracy is very, very bad. And, you know, we're supposed to be the republic, you know, the Republican Party, you know. But what happens is when the majority becomes dictator, they can rule over the minority. And now, basically, 51% or 52% of the American people are living off the 49% of the producers, and it's only consumption. And this is very, very dangerous. So we have to, once again, think about the principles of liberty in order to really hatch it and grow on this. There were challenges immediately after the Constitutional Convention. They started nibbling away at the principles laid out. And I think our last 100 years has not been good. But I think the growth of the freedom movement in the last 5 to 10 years has been fantastic. Last 5 years, marvelous. And the young people are you know, attracted to it. So I would say things are going very well in that regard. So what we need to do is make sure this is encouraged and make sure that the people know about it and understand it and know what to respond to. Because the type of government we get, it's really what the people allow to happen. You know, it's easy for us, as I do so often, condemn the executive branch, the courts, and the Congress. It's all their fault. No, it's all our faults because we're responsible for the people up there. You know, frequently I use the quote from Samuel Adams about an irate, tireless minority will, you know, bring about changes, and they're more important than the majority. But it's a mixture too. Ideas have consequences. They estimate that 4 to 5% of the people who led our revolution knew it and understood it. And the majority, you know, did this back and forth. And fortunately, the leaders, the ones that had the bright ideas, they won out. But you eventually, ideas have the consequences. An irate minority, very, very powerful. But you know what? You still have to sell it to the people. Because it is the people that will make the decision, that there will be an endorsement. So I think there's an irate minority, tireless minority, fighting and joining the cause of liberty, and that's exciting. And on some issues we are winning, and we can win. We still have enough freedom to bring about the changes. These changes are current. I mentioned the Federal Reserve. This is way beyond what I ever dreamed could happen. Because I was there for a good many years. Nobody was paying any attention, so I thought that's the way it would be forever. But no, the conditions in the country are coming about, and it's the fruition of those who academically have provided so much information for us. And the same thing is occurring with these endless wars. You know, I'm surprised, why we put up for a war, the longest war in our history, 10 years or longer. You know, when Eisenhower, when the country got irate over the Korean War, it was only 2 years. The war started in 50, by 52, he ran his whole election on, this war's stupid, what are we doing this for? So, but here we are. 10 years, how long are we going to do it? How long is it going to continue? And I think it's way too much internationalism. I like internationalism as voluntary trade, travel, freedom of movement and all that, but I do not like the idea. I'm not much enamored by the internationalism of the United Nations and NATO and World Trade Organizations and all these things. That's all government internationalism. That will not solve our problem. That's more government. We need, of course, less government. it might be discouraging that we fight these battles, we try to win votes, we lose the votes, and it just seems so futile. People say, well, I write my congressman, he doesn't listen to me. And, you know, you hear those stories over and over. But it reminds me of a story of a conversation that occurred shortly after the Vietnam War was over. We had a Colonel Summers, who got together with Colonel Tu, representing Vietnam. And the discussion was, how do we, you know, just put this all behind us? And it was just sort of cleaning up the mess and us getting out of there totally and completely. And our colonel was still pretty bold. He said, you know, and he was, you know, wanted to get some reassurance. So he says to Colonel Tu, he says, you know, he says, one thing is, you never once beat us on the battlefield. And Tu stood there for a minute, thought about it, and says, Colonel, he says, you're exactly right, but it's also irrelevant. It's irrelevant if you can win or lose one battle, but you gotta win the war. So our freedom movement might not be winning all these battles, but we're going to win the war. The neat part is that we don't have to invent anything new, you know, because we've had a taste of it. We can improve on it. We don't have to invent the gold standard, but we certainly can have a better monetary standard. We know what freedom is about. We have the maximum amount of freedom of any country, so we don't have to invent this, but we can do a better job and maybe have a better protection of individual liberty. So we can improve on this. We don't have to invent it, and it isn't like we have to say America is a mess and that's all their fault. We can pick up the good parts of America, the good parts of markets and property rights and contracts and you know, limited government. This is what we can do. It's available to us. It will not be nearly as difficult for our shift toward liberty as it would be, say, in a country like Russia, because they didn't have our traditions and they still have a lot of problems. But we have to get people confident that freedom really is the issue and understand how it works, because we have been taught for so long, freedom is okay, but don't carry it too far. Well, I would say freedom is freedom. Freedom comes from the fact that you are an individual, you get your life and your liberty from your Creator, and the government should protect it and never take any of it away from you. We are frequently criticized about, you know, the economic policies and the foreign policy, that we're going back to the old days of isolationism and the old days of the gold standard. But let me tell you, big government is very, very old. And big government and inflation and destruction of currency, that is ancient and based on ideas that are wrong. Those who criticize us, who want a lot less government, they are the past, we are the future. We must maintain a sense of curiosity. Not just that we want a better life and we want to be left alone and we want peace, but we have to be curious enough to know exactly the plain truth of economics and foreign policy. You're in a unique group. Most people do not come to political rallies. Believe me, they vote at the last minute and they look up and they wonder what I should vote for today. So if you come to a place like this, you're in this small minority, so your responsibility is much greater. But the responsibility is also to understand the issues and not casually accept, oh, well, yes, the government says I have to do this, and Federal Reserve System, oh, they're wonderful. They always take a good care of us, and and we also have to have a welfare system because we don't want anybody falling through the cracks. And also, well, you guys who want freedom, you're not humanitarian, you don't care about your fellow man. Well, guess what? You can't be a humanitarian without being for the free market, because every other one destroys people's wealth and causes them poverty and unemployment. A lot of people will criticize and say, well, you still want too much liberty. You want people to make all their decisions for themselves. Yeah, I do. They say, well, what if they make a mistake? Well, then they suffer the consequences. So what if I as your political, politician, what if the politician makes a mistake? Does he suffer? No, he's probably protected, and we suffer. So, we want to make all our decisions. We should have a right to spend our own money. What's wrong with that principle? It's your money, you work for it. Yeah. If you understand natural rights, if you understand the right of the individual's life and liberty, it should follow that you have a right to keep the fruits of your labor. They're yours, they're not the government. We also understand pretty well in this country that we have intellectual freedom. We're allowed to read books, even books about communism, very, very destructive philosophies. We don't burn the books and take them off the shelves. And we have religious freedom, and we're pretty good at religious freedom. Sometimes we see some things that aren't perfect, but basically we're allowed to pick our religion, we're allowed to pick no religion. And religion, can you imagine how many dangerous things have happened over the history of the world in the name of religion? But we don't say you can't have religion because there's a risk to it. And then you say, well, if you legalize all this freedom of choice, even on social matters, your own personal choice, how you want to run your life and what you eat, in a free society, you will always be able to buy a big drink with a lot of sugar in it. In a free society, you will always be able to buy and drink raw milk if you'd like to. Then people say, well, that's okay, but there are other things we don't want you to do. We don't want you to put other things in your body or into your lungs, so therefore we need to have somebody protecting you against those dangerous things. Well, everything is dangerous. Where's the responsibility? It should be, in a free society, it should be by the individual. But the one reason why there's a hesitation on the left about economic freedom is they'll say, well, there'll be stupid people out there, and they won't save their money, and they won't take care of themselves, and on and on. And others say, well, if we allow people to put into their bodies whatever they want, they're going to make a lot of mistakes. You know what happens is, even if you can convince it's better, it's this lack of tolerance. It's like, if I endorse your freedom to do whatever you want, religious-wise or economically or whatever, that I endorse what you do. And that is not the case. Because you have religious freedom, I don't endorse your religious beliefs. I endorse your right to do what you want. If you understand the freedom philosophy, you'll understand why there will be more peace, there will be more prosperity, there will be more tolerance. Now, once again, how do we unify people? How do we bring people together? That is the message. That is the message that brings us together. Because we don't have to ask you what you're going to do with your freedom. You might want to use your freedom for one thing, you for something else, but you come together and say, as long as you allow me to do my thing and spend my money, and I assume my responsibility. We should all fight for the same thing, and that is our freedom. We all should be in it together. But it is, I am convinced that we do live in very, very important times, very interesting times, but I'm very much optimistic on what's happening intellectually. Tell you what, when I come to a group like this, people like you, conservatives and want good government and less government, believe in the Constitution, this helps me a whole lot. But when I go to Washington, I have trouble. So I have to come home frequently to visit with you. I co-sponsored a piece of legislation this week, and I just want to mention to you, I want to see how you respond, because you might disagree with me on this. Because, you know, we've had presidential conventions going on, and since 1976, the first really only national convention that I was a delegate. I was a delegate for Ronald Reagan in 1976, and that was the last time. And that was the last time we actually had a convention that was designed to pick the candidate. But since that time, Republican and Democrat, they're not that purpose. They're just shows. And guess who's paying for it? You pay for the Democrats, and the Democrats pay for the Republicans, but most people aren't either Republican or Democrat. The large majority are independents, and they have to pay. Guess how much they've spent over the last, since '76? It's $220 million to do all that stuff, all this grandstanding and all this free advertising. So I co-sponsored the bill that said no more tax money for conventions. Today, we face the economic crisis. I think every bit as serious as the economic crisis. As a matter of fact, I put it a little bit higher than economic crisis, is the attack on our civil liberties, our personal liberties. The mention of how we can be arrested and these assumptions made. I think this is a very, very serious shift. And the way it comes about, I mean, the fact that executive orders, you know, if I had ever had a chance to be the president and I could use executive orders, the only executive orders I would ever do was write an executive order and cancel out the executive orders. Yeah! Constitution that says who writes the laws. It's the Congress supposed to write the laws, and not the president, not the courts. Just think of where we would be if we would prohibit the courts from writing law or interfering in state laws. Guess what? We would never have Roe versus Wade. We would have had a Texas law that wouldn't have been repealed by the Supreme Court. So it is under the In fact, I strongly support the position that we could settle a lot of problems. It wouldn't be perfect, and that is repeal Roe versus Wade. I'll tell you how to do it. I have a bill in that by majority vote in the Congress and the signatures by the President says that the jurisdiction of that issue is removed from the federal courts, and then the states could write prohibition. And if you think of all the laws the executive branch writes, not only the executive, the signing statements. Well, I like this part, but I don't like this part, so I'm going to sign this. They take upon themselves that they have a line item veto. But what about regulation? Are regulations equivalent to laws? Absolutely. They're worse because nobody knows where they are or what they say, and you're always tried in a court outside the regular court system. You're guilty until proven innocent. Thousands and thousands of pages. When are we going to wake up and say enough is enough? We have too many.
Yeah.
On January 1st of this year, the American people suffered the onslaught of 40,000 new laws. It's too many. I'd like to get rid of 40,000 laws. Another bit of encouragement we have, this week with the election in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
A difficult task, politically unpopular, and up till now it's been a political disaster to take on unions, in government unions. But Walker took it on, and he came out with more votes this time than he went in. We need more people with backbone to stand up.
Yeah.
I think his victory was very good, and it will help. It's not going to solve the problem. It's going to help other states. States have more obligations, and Texas has been a better state, and we've done a lot better because some of our rules are stricter, didn't suffer as much in the recession and all. But the fact that you take a state like California and others that have just gone overboard on these promises, there'll be more states seeing it up to them. But they don't have a printing press, so they have more pressure. In Washington, it's different, because when the politicians know that they continue to spend, and they don't have to face up to their constituents and say, well, no, I can't vote for this and this and this, and I'm not going to vote anything on the military, and they go on and on. They keep voting it. Guess why they can get away with that? Because they can always go to the lender of last resort, and that is the Federal Reserve System. If you're looking for solutions economically and you want a different foreign policy and you want to bring things under control, you do have to study the issue of money. Because it's very bad constitutional law, because gold and silver is still legal tender under the Constitution. Morally, it's equivalent to counterfeit, so it's a moral breakdown. Economically, it's a disaster because it is the cause of the business cycle. Booms and busts until eventually you get a real big bust, and we're in the middle of this big bust, which I believe has actually been going on for the last 12 years, since the year 2000. But this other notion, which is less talked about, is the fact that it facilitates big government. The politicians don't have to act responsibly. The people don't